as travel has come back in a huge way, what is it like to be in the travel industry right now?
I think everyone knows that the travel industry basically came to a standstill when COVID hit. And it wasn't long before we realized that people really, like travel was core to what people expect. We quickly turned to, okay, folks are gonna come back. What does that mean? How did travel change? And so I think we have seen that, for example, and I'm sure you see this in the restaurant industry as well, we're not getting the same level of service that we expect from a lot of these brands because travel came back so fast. And so I think there's a lot of things that have changed, in a lot of ways we've had to adjust coming out of the craziness of travel picking back up. Everyone has heard the term revenge travel, though I think we're settling into people realized what being stuck in their house was for 2 years, and people have realized that they actually just want to go spend money on travel and get out and about.
How do you see, especially with Blackbird, helping evolve the restaurant landscape beyond reservations, beyond access, into something that's really meaningful for both a diner and a restaurant owner?
Yeah, I mean, so the interesting thing about restaurants is it's a $1 trillion industry made up of 70% independent restaurants, and most of them are subscale. So as the industry grows, profitability goes down. That's the dynamics of the restaurant industry, which is both alarming, but I think also exciting, fertile ground for innovation. And I think the key thing that we have observed and are trying to help restaurants fix is that restaurants really have no idea who their customers are at all. And even in a restaurant that takes every table at every table is a reservation, if you think about it, and even if they're all two tops, then the restaurant knows exactly 50% of the people who are in the room. If you don't know who your customers are, and you're a subscale business to start with, then retention is a real challenge. But it turns out, as I said before, it turns out that actually there is a very natural loyalty that consumers have to their favorite restaurants. And I think we can give restaurants some simple, but very, very high leverage tools to get to know their customers a lot better, to create much stronger relationships with them, and in doing so, to increase their LTV and increase profitability.
So whether we're talking travel or dining, how have you witnessed consumer expectations change?
The expectation of, for example, getting room service every day in your hotel, I think has changed. Those types of service when you travel, I think people have reset their expectations post-pandemic, and even at a five-star hotel. I think people at the same time expect to have everything at their fingertips at any time. So whether that's, we're all on our phones, you want to be able to know, okay, I show up in a city, where do I look for my next restaurant? Where do I want to go eat? What activity do I want to do? And people want to be able to make those choices very quickly, and they want to be able to do that, right then and there, and they don't want to talk to anybody anymore. So we have to give people the technology to have that at their fingertips.
I think in the early and middle days of the pandemic and the last couple of years, I think consumers were very understanding and patient with restaurants. I think consumers were sort of okay with mediocre service and waiting for things and things not happening exactly right. I think that's completely done. I think consumers are back to their old demanding ways in the restaurant context, in part because prices have gone way up. I mean, it's very expensive to go to a restaurant, and it's very expensive to get a restaurant delivered now, thanks to how the third-party delivery game works. So I think in many ways, consumer expectations were high, are high, will always be high.
How do you envision an issuer then playing a larger role in dining?
The most obvious thing is you have all these points. The splurge at a restaurant is like a good bottle of wine. There's really not a good way to use points to buy a bottle of wine. And there should be. So I think that's sort of an obvious low-hanging fruit opportunity, just to sort of connect the dots better for us. It's perfect for travel. Points are amazing for travel. They're terrible for restaurants. So just connecting the dots better, I think, is one thing. And I guess I feel like the big unlock should be around data. I mean, the credit card, you guys have such high fidelity data about people's spending behavior. What I don't see yet is credit cards using that as sort of a behavioral footprint of sorts to make dining better for the individual, to sort of make the relationship between credit card and consumer like a little bit more anticipating needs.
We're trying to differentiate our card products. We're trying to differentiate Citi Travel. How do you think we could do that more effectively?
One of the things we actually launched with, which was newer to the travel industry, is the way that we were looking at actually planning the trip. I think we all know that planning is almost as exciting as going on your trip itself. And so one of the ways that we look at that is we have a shopping cart on the site today, and that shopping cart actually acts as a planning tool. And so the more that we can help with that, and the more that we can get the consumers engaged in that, it allows you to pick 3 or 4 hotels in a certain destination, then decide, check a box, say, actually, I'm going to check out with this one. Plan with your partner. A lot more we can do around sharing itineraries, and a lot more we can do with all that big data, as we've talked about in the past, in order to make sure that we're getting to the right customers at the right time. And that personalization aspect will only continue to grow over time as we work together. But I do think the aspects of making sure that folks at the time that they're looking to travel are able to take advantage of the breadth, the depth of the availability of whether it's again an activity, different hotel options, bouncing around Europe. You can actually do all of that planning within a single shopping cart and within the Citi platform today. And that is really new and differentiated in the industry, and not what folks are really have seen in the past with other card issuers.
As we think about AI, obviously all hinging on rich data, how do you think about AI and its ability to transform both travel and dining?
The lowest hanging fruit is just on customer servicing. Restaurants are employing people to field questions all day. A lot actually have stopped doing that over the last several years, and so it's why it's harder to reach a restaurant at 2 p.m. And I think the first thing we're going to point to AI at is making sure that if you have a question of a restaurant at 2 p.m, you get a good answer quickly.
Yeah, I think Holdings is looking at this really across the board and looking at, what is the consumer impact, but what is also the internal impact. And I think the customer service aspect, is a big one. And then efficiencies internally as well for employees are really important.